Imagine being so wealthy that a simple act of generosity could destroy an entire economy. In 1324, a king walked into Cairo with so much gold that he single-handedly crashed the value of the precious metal for over a decade. The richest man in history didn't just display his wealth, he accidentally weaponized it, crashing economies and changing the course of world history. His name was Mansa Musa, and this is the story of how unlimited wealth became an unstoppable curse. Before we dive into this incredible story, if you enjoy content about historical figures who changed the world, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Would you want to be the richest person in history if it meant you could accidentally destroy economies? Let's get into it. The year was 1312. And the African continent was about to witness the rise of a ruler unlike any other. Mansa Musa ascended to the throne of the Mali Empire, inheriting not just a kingdom, but a golden empire that stretched across West Africa like a glittering crown. Let's put this into perspective. Mansa Musa's wealth was estimated to be worth over $400 billion in today's money. That's 4 times what the richest person alive today possesses. That's more wealth than most modern nations could dream of. And unlike today's billionaires, whose fortunes exist as numbers on screens, Mansa's wealth was tangible, real, and quite literally golden. The Mali Empire sprawled across a territory larger than Western Europe, encompassing modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, Nigeria, and Chad. But what made Mali extraordinary wasn't just its size, it was what lay beneath its soil. Gold, mountains of it. The gold fields of Mali produced the purest, most coveted gold in the medieval world. European kings paid fortunes for West African gold. Middle Eastern sultans built their treasuries with it, and Mansa Musa controlled it all. But Musa wasn't just rich. He was intelligent, strategic, and deeply religious. He had inherited the throne under unusual circumstances. His predecessor, Abu Bakr II, had become obsessed with discovering what lay beyond the Atlantic Ocean. Against all advice, Abu Bakr had assembled a fleet of 2,000 ships and sailed west, never to return. Some say he was mad, others say he was a visionary. Either way, he left his empire to Musa, and Musa had plans. He stood in his palace in Niani, the capital city, surrounded by advisors who trembled in his presence. Not because he was cruel, Musa was known for his justice and generosity, but because his power was so absolute, so overwhelming, that even breathing the wrong way in his presence felt dangerous. "My lord," his chief advisor Mahmud approached cautiously, "the treasury reports are ready. The gold production this quarter has exceeded all previous records." Musa barely glanced at the scrolls. More gold. Always more gold. He had so much of it that it had lost meaning. He could build a palace of solid gold and barely notice the expense. He could pay every debt in the known world and still have reserves that would last centuries. But what haunted Musa wasn't the gold, it was his soul. He was a devout Muslim, and Islamic law was clear. Every able Muslim must make the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, at least once in their lifetime. Musa had delayed this duty for years, consumed with the responsibilities of ruling. But now, approaching his 40s, he felt the weight of this unfulfilled obligation like a stone on his chest. "Mahmud," Musa said quietly, "prepare the empire. I'm going to Mecca." The advisor's face paled. "My lord, a journey of that magnitude, the logistics alone." "I'm not going alone," Musa interrupted, his voice firm. "I'm taking the empire with me." Mahmud swallowed hard. "What do you mean, my lord?" Musa stood, his robes flowing like liquid gold itself. "I mean that when Mansa Musa makes his pilgrimage, the entire world will know. I will not sneak to Mecca like a common merchant. I will arrive as what I am, the richest king on earth. And I will be so generous, so magnificent, that my name will be remembered for 1,000 years. What Musa didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that his ambition would come true, but not in the way he imagined.
The preparations began immediately. 60,000 people would accompany the emperor, soldiers, servants, officials, scholars, and griots who would document every moment. 12,000 servants would be dressed in silk and brocade. 80 camels each would carry 300 pounds of pure gold dust, hundreds of horses, thousands of goats and sheep for food, and countless provisions for a journey that would cover nearly 4,000 miles. But there was something else driving Musa, something he confessed to no one except in his private prayers. He wanted to prove something. The Islamic world knew Mali existed, but they saw it as a distant, almost mythical land. Musa wanted to show them that African kingdoms weren't primitive backwaters. They were sophisticated, wealthy, and powerful civilizations. This pilgrimage would be his statement to history. As the caravan assembled outside Niani, the sight was breathtaking. A golden river of humanity stretching as far as the eye could see. Citizens lined the roads, watching in awe as their emperor prepared to embark on the journey of a lifetime. Musa's wife, Inari, approached him the night before departure. "You're taking too much gold," she said softly. "No one needs to see that much wealth." Musa smiled. "They need to see exactly that much wealth. The world thinks we're savages living in mud huts. I'm going to show them who we really are. Or you'll show them who you want them to think you are. There's a difference." Her words haunted him as the caravan departed, but he pushed them aside. This was destiny. This was his moment. What Mansa Musa didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that his golden caravan wasn't heading towards glory. It was heading towards economic catastrophe. And the first domino would fall in a city that had stood for thousands of years. Cairo.
The journey to Mecca took months. Mansa Musa's caravan moved like a slow, golden serpent across the Sahara Desert, stopping at every oasis, every settlement, every town along the ancient trade routes. And at every stop, Musa did something that seemed generous but would prove catastrophic. He gave away gold. Not small amounts, not symbolic gifts. He gave away gold like it was sand. In every village, Musa would distribute gold coins to the poor. In every town, he'd commission buildings and mosques, paying workers in pure gold. His heralds would announce his arrival, and people would flock from miles around just to witness the spectacle, and maybe, just maybe, catch some of the golden rain that fell wherever Mansa Musa went. His advisors began to worry. "My lord," Mahmud said one evening as they camped under the stars, "we've been distributing gold at an unprecedented rate. Perhaps we should conserve some for the journey back?" Musa laughed, a deep, rich sound that echoed across the dunes. "Mahmud, we have 80 camels carrying gold. 80. We could give away half and still be the wealthiest caravan ever to cross this desert. Let the people see what Mali's prosperity looks like." But Mahmud wasn't just worried about running out of gold. He was worried about something more subtle, something economic that he couldn't quite articulate. He'd noticed that in towns where they distributed large amounts of gold, prices had started rising dramatically. A loaf of bread that cost one small piece of gold now cost 3. Rooms that were affordable became expensive. It was as if the gold itself was becoming less valuable. But how could gold become less valuable? It was gold. Then they reached Cairo. The Egyptian capital was one of the greatest cities in the world, a crossroads of trade, culture, and power. The Mamluk Sultan Al-Nasser Muhammad ruled from his palace, and Cairo's markets were legendary. Merchants from India, China, Europe, and Africa converged here to trade silks, spices, slaves, and, of course, gold. When word reached Sultan al-Nasser that Mansa Musa was approaching with a caravan of unimaginable wealth, he was intrigued. African gold had always been valuable, but the descriptions he was hearing seemed like exaggerations. No one could be that wealthy. Then Musa arrived. The Sultan sent emissaries to greet him, expecting perhaps 100 men, maybe a few chests of gold as diplomatic gifts. Instead, they found 60,000 people, 80 camels loaded with gold, an emperor who radiated power like the sun radiated light.
The emissaries reported back, breathless. "Your Excellency, the descriptions weren't exaggerated. If anything, they understated his wealth. This man has more gold than I thought existed in the entire world." Sultan al-Nasser was fascinated. He invited Musa to his palace for an official reception, a meeting between two of the most powerful rulers in the Islamic world. But this is where things got complicated. In Islamic diplomatic protocol, visiting rulers were expected to bow to their hosts as a sign of respect. Mansa Musa refused. "I bow only to Allah," he told the Sultan's officials. This created an immediate diplomatic crisis. The Sultan couldn't meet with him if he wouldn't observe protocol. Musa couldn't bow without compromising his sovereignty. They were at an impasse. Finally, a compromise was reached. Musa would attend the reception, but he would not bow. Instead, he would prostrate himself toward Mecca for prayer, and the Sultan would happen to be in that general direction. Everyone could save face. The reception was magnificent. Two emperors, each powerful in their own right, each representing vast territories and wealth. They exchanged pleasantries, discussed religion and philosophy, and parted with mutual respect. But then, Mansa Musa stayed in Cairo for 3 months, and this is where everything went wrong. Musa was determined to make an impression. He bought property, he commissioned buildings, he gave gold to every mosque, he distributed gold to the poor in the streets. His entourage bought supplies, food, clothing, luxuries, and they paid for everything in gold. Lots and lots of gold. At first, the merchants of Cairo were ecstatic. They'd never seen such spending. A customer who paid without haggling, who bought without questioning prices, who distributed gold like water. But then, something strange happened. After the first month, a merchant named Hassan noticed something troubling. "The gold coins we received from the Mali people," he told his fellow traders, "they're not worth as much anymore." "What do you mean?" another merchant asked. "Gold is gold." "No," Hassan insisted. "I tried to exchange them for silver, and the money changers gave me less than they would have a month ago. Something's happening." What was happening was simple economics, though no one in 1324 fully understood it. Inflation. Mansa Musa had flooded Cairo's market with so much gold that he'd increased the overall supply dramatically. And when supply increases while demand stays the same, value decreases. The gold that had once been precious was now almost common. And as gold's value dropped, the price of everything else shot up. A loaf of bread that cost 1 piece of gold now cost 5. A room that was 2 gold coins now cost 10. Workers demanded higher wages because their gold salaries weren't buying as much. Merchants raised prices to compensate, and the spiral continued. By the time Mansa Musa left Cairo to continue his pilgrimage to Mecca, he destabilized the entire Egyptian economy. The gold market wouldn't recover for over a decade. But Musa didn't realize what he'd done. He continued to Mecca, fulfilled his religious obligation, and felt spiritually complete. On the journey back, however, his advisors finally convinced him to stop giving away gold so freely. "My lord," Mahmud said carefully, "we've heard troubling reports from Cairo. Our generosity may have caused complications." Complications? Economic complications. Perhaps on the return journey we should be more conservative with our distributions. Musa frowned, but agreed. He had accomplished his goal. Everyone now knew about Mali's wealth and power. Perhaps it was time for moderation. But moderation came too late. The damage was done. And when Mansa Musa finally returned home after 2 years away, he would discover that his golden touch hadn't just affected Cairo, it had triggered consequences that would reach all the way back to Mali itself. Mansa Musa returned to Niani in 1326, exhausted but spiritually fulfilled. He'd completed the Hajj, impressed the Islamic world, and made Mali's name known across 3 continents. He'd met scholars, theologians, and rulers. He'd seen the great cities of the Muslim world, Cairo, Mecca, Medina. He felt like he'd accomplished something historic. He had no idea how right he was. The first sign that something was wrong came within weeks of his return. His treasurer, a man named Ali, who'd managed Mali's finances for decades, requested an urgent audience. "My lord, we have a serious problem," Ali said, his face grim. "The gold reserves?" Musa asked. No, my lord. Well, yes, those two. We spent approximately 1.5 billion in today's dollars during your pilgrimage, but that's not the main issue. We can replenish the reserves. The problem is the gold's value. Musa leaned forward. Explain. Ali unrolled a series of reports on the table, letters from merchants, trade reports, complaints from foreign buyers. The gold we mine here in Mali, the gold that made us wealthy, it's not worth what it used to be. Merchants are paying us less for the same quantity. Our trade revenue has dropped by nearly 30%. How is that possible? Musa demanded. We have the purest gold in the world. We do, my lord, but you flooded the international markets. Word has spread that Mali has so much gold they literally give it away in the streets. When something is abundant, it becomes less valuable. Basic trade principles. Musa felt his stomach tighten. What are you saying? I'm saying that your generosity in Cairo and along the pilgrimage route has devalued our primary export. The very thing that made us wealthy has become less precious. The emperor sat back, stunned. He'd wanted to show the world Mali's wealth. He'd succeeded, but in doing so, he'd diminished the value of that wealth itself. It was like a cruel joke the universe was playing on him. But Ali wasn't finished. There's more, my lord. The merchants and scholars you brought back from your journey. What about them? Musa had returned with dozens of Islamic scholars, architects, and artisans, hoping to elevate Mali's intellectual and cultural standing. They're expensive, very expensive. You promised them extravagant salaries. You commissioned the construction of mosques and universities. All of this requires gold, and we're earning less gold than before because our gold is worth less. Do you see the problem? Musa did see the problem. He'd created a vicious cycle. The more he spent to elevate Mali, the more he devalued Mali's wealth, which meant he had less to spend, which meant he had to mine more gold, which further flooded the market and decreased value even more. What do we do? He asked, a question he'd rarely needed to ask in his life. Ali took a deep breath. We need to borrow gold, my lord. Borrow? The richest man in history needs to borrow? Yes, we need to remove gold from circulation, not add to it. We need to buy back some of what you distributed in Cairo. It's the only way to stabilize the market. And so, incredibly, Mansa Musa, the man with $400 billion, had to take out high-interest loans from Egyptian moneylenders to buy back his own gold. The irony was almost poetic. But the economic problems were only part of his troubles. The pilgrimage had taken 2 years away from the empire. And in that time, cracks had begun to show. Regional governors had grown accustomed to operating independently. Some had even started wondering if they needed an emperor at all. Border territories that had been conquered during Mali's expansion began testing their independence, launching small rebellions to see if the emperor was still strong enough to respond. Musa's military commander, a grizzled veteran named Sagmundia, laid it out bluntly. My lord, while you were praying in Mecca, your empire was fracturing. We've put down 3 significant rebellions, but there are rumors of more. Some of your governors think you've gone soft, too focused on religion and not enough on ruling. Then I'll prove them wrong, Musa said firmly. Assemble the army, we march north. My lord, the treasury? I don't care about the treasury. I will not let my empire crumble because of gold markets and economics. Mali was built on strength and unity. We'll return to that. But it wasn't that simple anymore. Musa discovered that wars cost money, a lot of money. And when your money is worth less than it used to be, wars become more expensive. Soldiers needed higher pay, weapons cost more, supplies were more expensive. Everything that had once been easily affordable was now a calculation, a negotiation. For the first time in his life, Mansa Musa had to think about money. He won the military campaigns, of course. Mali's army was still formidable, and Musa's personal presence on the battlefield inspired loyalty and fear. But the victories felt hollow. He wasn't expanding the empire anymore, he was just holding it together. Back in Niani, he walked through his palace at night, unable to sleep. The golden decorations that had once filled him with pride now seemed to mock him. All this wealth, and what had it bought? A name in history books? Certainly. Respect from foreign powers? Absolutely. But at what cost? His wife, Inari, found him sitting alone in the throne room one night, staring at nothing. "You look like a man who's lost something," she said softly. "I have," he replied. "I've lost certainty. I used to know exactly who I was and what I was doing. Now every decision feels complicated." She sat beside him. "You wanted to show the world who we are. You succeeded, but maybe you showed them too much. I wanted them to respect us. They do, but now they also know our weaknesses. They know we have so much gold that we don't value it properly. They know you'll spend anything for your faith, for your image. That's valuable information for enemies." Musa turned to her. "Do you think I made a mistake?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I think you made a choice, and choices have consequences. The question isn't whether it was a mistake, it's what you do now." What Mansa Musa did next would determine whether his empire would survive his ambitions, or whether he'd be remembered as the king who had everything and gave it all away.
Mansa Musa spent the remaining years of his reign trying to undo the damage his generosity had caused. It was a strange position for the richest man in history, desperately trying to make his wealth valuable again. He implemented strict controls on gold exports, limiting how much could leave Mali's borders. He taxed gold production more heavily, trying to reduce the amount entering circulation. He even stopped the extravagant gift-giving that had characterized his early reign, becoming almost miserly by his previous standards. His people didn't understand the change. The emperor who once gave gold to beggars now counts every coin, they whispered. Has he lost his generosity along with his youth? But Musa wasn't being stingy, he was being strategic. And slowly, painfully, it started to work. Over the years, gold's value began to stabilize. The international markets adjusted. Mali's trade revenues improved, though they never quite returned to their pre-pilgrimage heights. The scholarly community he'd brought back from his journey did bear fruit, however. Timbuktu, which had been a minor trading post, was transformed into one of the world's great centers of learning. The Sankore University became famous across the Islamic world. Scholars traveled from Cairo, Baghdad, and Damascus to study there. Mali became known not just for gold, but for knowledge. This was Musa's true legacy, though he didn't fully realize it at the time. In 1337, after ruling for 25 years, Mansa Musa died. His son, Magan I, inherited the throne and the complicated empire his father had left behind. The historical records from this period are sparse, filtered through Arab chroniclers and oral traditions, but what's clear is that Musa's pilgrimage had changed everything. He'd put Mali on the world map, literally. European cartographers began including Mali in their maps, often with a drawing of a black king holding a golden scepter. The famous Catalan Atlas of 1375 shows Mansa Musa holding a gold nugget, a testament to how his journey had captured the world's imagination. But had he destroyed his own empire? Not quite, but he'd certainly weakened it. The Mali Empire would continue for another 200 years, but it never quite regained the overwhelming dominance it had enjoyed before Musa's pilgrimage. The gold market instability had lasting effects. The economic drain of his 2-year journey had been immense, and the revelation of Mali's wealth had made it a target. European powers began scheming about how to access those gold fields directly, eventually leading to the colonial era that would devastate Africa. In Cairo, merchants still told stories about the king who'd crashed their economy with kindness. "Be careful what you wish for," they'd say. "You might meet a king so generous he makes your money worthless." The paradox of Mansa Musa's life was this. He'd wanted to prove that Mali was a sophisticated, powerful civilization worthy of respect. He succeeded, but in proving it so extravagantly, he'd also exposed vulnerabilities that would be exploited for centuries. His pilgrimage had demonstrated both the heights of African achievement and, inadvertently, the dangers of unlimited wealth without economic understanding. He'd shown that you could have all the gold in the world and still make catastrophic mistakes.
Modern economists still study Musa's journey as a cautionary tale about inflation, market flooding, and the dangers of massive, sudden economic shifts. His actions in 1324 had effects that rippled for decades, destabilizing trade routes, altering gold values, and reshaping international perceptions of Africa. But here's what makes Mansa Musa's story truly fascinating. Despite the economic chaos he caused, despite the instability his generosity created, he achieved his primary goal. He wanted to be remembered. He wanted Mali to be known and respected. And 700 years later, we're still talking about him. He's recognized as the richest person in human history. His name is taught in schools across the world. His journey is legendary. His empire, though long gone, is remembered with admiration. So, did he crash his own empire? Yes and no. He destabilized it economically, created vulnerabilities that would be exploited, and set in motion forces that would eventually contribute to Mali's decline. But he also elevated it culturally, intellectually, and historically in ways that transcended mere wealth. The final irony is this: Mansa Musa thought his wealth was his greatest asset, but what made him truly unforgettable wasn't the gold, it was what he did with it. His massive generosity, while economically disastrous, was a statement of values that resonated across centuries. In a world obsessed with hoarding wealth, he gave it away. In a world focused on taking, he demonstrated giving on an unprecedented scale. He proved that a black African king could command the attention and respect of the entire known world. He proved that African civilizations were sophisticated, wealthy, and culturally rich. And he proved that sometimes the grandest gestures have the most complicated consequences. Today, when we look at billionaires hoarding wealth, avoiding taxes, and accumulating resources they could never spend in 1,000 lifetimes, Mansa Musa stands as a fascinating counterpoint. He represents both a warning and an inspiration. A warning about the economic dangers of massive wealth redistribution without planning, and an inspiration about the power of generosity, faith, and vision. His empire may have suffered from his choices, but his legacy flourished. And perhaps that was the trade he unknowingly made: temporary power for permanent remembrance, imperial stability for historical immortality. 700 years later, Mansa Musa remains the richest person who ever lived, not just in gold, but in the wealth of a story that refuses to be forgotten. So, here's my question for you. If you had unlimited wealth, would you use it to help others even if it caused economic chaos, or would you hoard it to maintain stability? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story taught you something new about history, economics, or human nature, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the fascinating, complicated stories that shaped our world. Until next time, remember, sometimes the greatest power comes from knowing when not to use all your power.